Open the fucking door, man. You said you was gonna be there when I came. I've been knocking on the door for 5 minutes. I know you up there, man. Stop playing with me. Come on, man. Yo, fuck it. I'ma come up. I came to collect, motherfucker. Stop playing with me. Yo. Crazy, I can't sleep it off, man. I can't sleep it off. Thought I seen it all. Wrong again, my friend. Gotta get back, gotta get my act.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Red Zone. And that is my track with Napoleon the Legend. My show, I can play my songs, God damn it. But as you know, this is our leftist sports show with two of my favorite leftist sports commentators. Let's bring them in right now. Our main host coming in all the way live from Virginia. He is also my co-host and part of the Saturday crew. Marcus of the Left Flank Vets.
What's up? What's up? What's up? What's going on? Happy to be here.
It's a lovely shirt. I was playing Bitter Lake.
Yeah. Which in like we've talked about it in like the background, but I'm very excited when you're like, "Hey, it's my show. I get to play my music." You know, I'm very excited to say something close to that. This is the music that I helped curate.
I got to constantly give Napoleon a shout out for that because again, I hit him up super randomly. I want to say if it wasn't Christmas Eve, it was like maybe 2 or 3 days before Christmas. And I was like, "Hey man, I got this track." And he's like, "You trying to put this out by Christmas?" I was like, "I would really love to put it out by Christmas." And I woke up that morning with a message that said, "Check your inbox. I sent you a verse. I think it works."
I mean, we're not talking about music, but there's a lot of like famous, Jay-Z, Lil Wayne, like very like you're like heralded for, not writing shit down, being able to come up with it and like, okay, let's just get in the booth and put it down. If like Napoleon if he's got time, he's making music. Like when he makes music, it's not like sit around, think about it. Oh, what's the vibe? It's like he's decisive in his music making, and it's something that is very, very commendable. The more artists that I meet, his decisiveness is something that's very, very appreciative.
I don't make hip hop beats, if that makes any sense. I mean, I make instrumental music and definitely generally I have a 4/4 time signature and the tempos definitely vary, nothing too fast, but it's not verse chorus kind of stuff. And so for him to do something over that, it really left a lot of room. remember I was running and listening to it as an instrumental, and as I was running at the park near where I live, and I'm looking at the ocean and everything, I was like, oh, dude, I think a verse needs to go over this. This would be fucking rad. And I told him what I was thinking about, and he, I guess he could picture the same thing I was picturing as far as scenery and how it made him feel when he heard the track. So I fucking love it. It's on the last Bitter Lake release. If anybody wants to hear it on Bandcamp. At this point, I'm only putting stuff on Bandcamp because that way I can play the music for the show, and the show doesn't get a copyright strike and gets demonetized. So I'm tired of fighting my own music.
It's fucking wild. That's where you have to do the Prince shit. You know, you have to change your whole name. Do all that,
dude. When originally I had songs up for my last band because we had a larger. Well, now Bitter Lake's catalog is pretty large, but we had a pretty large catalog, and the songs were a little more known, I guess. And when I started getting hit left and right for that shit, I was like, well, fuck it. I'm just gonna put up this Bitter Lake stuff. And sometimes, of course, people don't know, I put up demo recordings, and that's the real fun. Because then I'm like, oh, maybe I should finish this song. There's some good comments about it. I'll go finish this.
Yeah.
Well, let's bring in the big homie from NC. I kind of don't like saying where people are from because of the shit that's been happening to me. But you may know him from You Don't Know History Pod. He is Mac.
What's up, gentlemen?
Damn.
What jersey is that?
That would be the Ohio State University.
Who is it?
Braxton Miller.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Fucking clap it up. Say it with your chest.
Braxton.
That's right. And
didn't he back somebody up for a minute?
No, he ended up switching positions his junior year of college to wideout. He was drafted in the 3rd round by the Texans, and he just never could stay on the field.
Oh, that was a damn shame.
Which is like, that's like, I don't know. That's like, it feels like an Ohio State curse.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a little bit of Greg Oden.
Oden, yeah.
Oh, that's sad. That's so sad, man. That kid to pan out. Well, before I let you guys go on sports talk, I do want to let you have a chance to make fun of me and my move. We got together too late on the phone, so I couldn't to tell you guys this beforehand. But last night, I think I told you this, Marcus. It's really quiet where I live. I was here for New Year's. Didn't no fireworks, no gunshots, nothing. Silent, right? And I'm in my place, and I'm watching a movie before I go do some more editing. Like, I'm gonna just chill out for a minute and do some more editing. As I turn the TV on, I hear pop. I'm like, okay, maybe it's firework or something. Maybe it's, I don't know. Cars don't drive. It's a dirt road I live off of, so it's not going to be like cars backfiring, right? And it's 9:00 at night, and I get quiet, and I hear pop pop, and I'm like, oh shit, this motherfucker's shooting. So I text my neighbor. So the way the place is, I kind of, one of these days I'm just going to walk. I'm going to show you. I think I've shown you before, Marcus, but I face the ocean, so anything going on in the front, I can't see it. So it sounded like it was going on in the front, and I wasn't about to go outside and check neither. Right? I know where the fuck I stay. And so it's quiet for like 30 minutes, and I'm on the phone with this woman that I talked to, and she's also got, hood tendencies, so she knows to, get tense when them sounds go off too. And it goes pop pop pop, and she's like, that sounds like gunshots. So I start texting my neighbor. I start texting my next door neighbor. I'm like, hey man, there's some gunshots going off, and nobody gets back to me. So I was like, I'm just gonna turn the lights out and start. I'm just gonna be real quiet and still. And then it finally like stopped, right? And so my neighbor in the front of the building sends me a message in the morning, and he goes, oh man, it was just fireworks. I was like, oh, that's weird, because who the fuck was lighting fireworks? And then I saw the OG neighbor that lives next door, this older white guy. I was at a burger place before I got down here. That's another story on why I can't eat at home or have hot water. Another I live in Mexico now. So I'm talking to my neighbor and we're chopping it up, and he was laughing about the fireworks. He goes, "Oh, that was a dude." He goes, "It's actually another black guy that lives on the street, and he was just throwing fireworks up in the air." I was like, "Oh, no shit." He goes, "Yeah." I was like, and he's from the Bay as well, so he knows where I'm from too. And I'm like, well, I heard I'm used to fireworks in the hood. It's just cats just throw them. I'm gonna light these bitches till I don't got them anymore, right? And it was real sporadic. And he goes, "Oh, no. He goes, "Out here, you'll know if it's a gunshot." I was like, "Why?" He goes, "Because you'll hear one."
Oh, damn. It's like these motherfuckers do not miss.
Bro, I didn't know whether to get a little shook or I was like, "Word." And what was fucked up was we were having this conversation amongst other people in the area. We're kind of in the downtown area, and they're all like, yeah. Oh yeah, one. You're just
damn.
Fuck
There's no
that.
shit. That says it's like for the people who do not understand, that means they don't have shootings. They have executions.
Yes.
executions. Like it's a rap for yo ass. And I fucking fell the fuck out in the burger joint, cracking the fuck up.
I mean, now if you hear two, it's just like, all right, fireworks
it's
time.
fireworks,
Let's grab a drink. Let's fucking party. I heard two pops. It's a good time.
What is a proper response when someone says that shit to you? And they weren't trying to fuck with me. They was being like hella serious. I was just like, "Oh, okay."
Well, I mean, there really isn't a proper response to that. It's just kind of acknowledge, keep that in mind, and then just hope you don't ever just hear one shot.
Exactly. It's basically it's like one of two ways. Like, have you seen enough fucked up shit in your life to be able to not turn that conversation awkward, or have you seen enough shit to where you're like us and you like laugh it off and like, oh, word, and then you move on. Unrelated question: who should I not piss off to get the one shot? Right, that's where the conversation needs to go.
That is one, like, you get back to the pad and you have a couple beers, okay, and who is the person that conducts the single shot so I can make sure I avoid them?
I actually times. that was part of the welcoming party for the moving into the neighborhood. It's like, oh, by the way, just so you know, maybe that house over there is the one you don't pay too close attention to. Thank you.
It's better than a casserole.
Yes. Which would you like? A really shittily prepared, like, Midwestern, I threw everything in this dish and put it in the oven at 450 for 12 minutes, and this is what you get, or the ability to just stay alive? Well, I'll pick staying alive over a gas grill.
Staying alive is winning. Just like when I was asking before about should I tell somebody to pick up their horse shit when I'm running, because the horse shit is everywhere. I'm like, come on, man, this is a bit of a problem. But I thought about it, and again, I'm not trying to be the one-shot guy.
It's not a one-shot problem. It's not a one-shot problem.
I mean, Jason, the fact that you gotta think, wherever you're running and there's horse shit, you have to think, do my neighbors have horses? And if the answer is no, that means somebody rich has horses, and you probably shouldn't fuck with them anyway. Right? Like, that's pretty easy deductive there.
It's good fucking proletariat math right there.
My pro math is a little off. I got to keep remembering that I'm in some rarefied air over here off this dirt road, man. Yeah. And I get to be an uppity Karen every so often when I'm trying to do my morning run, and I got to dodge horse shit like it's a goddamn fucking.
And I think this might be one of the smoothest transitions everyone will ever hear. But speaking of horses, the Denver Broncos We'll get this show started. The Denver Broncos and Jason. I don't know if people know this about you. You happen to be a Broncos fan.
I mean, if you couldn't tell,
Yes.
there's an alarming amount of blue and orange over on Jason's screen right now.
Hey, so for those of you that don't know, I've been a Bronco fan since I was a little kid. I am born in Oakland. I grew up in Richmond, California, Bay Area, East Bay, dude, all my life. And only now, living in Mexico, can I get Bronco shit.
That sounds about right.
This is
really
from
does.
the gas station.
Oh shit!
You can get anything Bronco you want.
Man,
You get here.
they got it. Well, so they just got hooked up.
Big Russ.
Big Russ, new quarterback coming out of Seattle. So, I mean, first off, since you are the Broncos fan, happy, sad, what's your take? How's he gonna do?
I kind of, if they were going to get a free agent, I was kind of hoping for Aaron Rodgers because I didn't think Russell Wilson was ever going to leave Seattle. I thought he was going to be kind of like Warren Moon in Houston, where by the time he left Houston, he was definitely not the Warren Moon that he was there, even though he put up some better than average numbers in Minnesota. So the fact that they got Russell Wilson relatively young at 33 and Tom Brady is showing us. Tom Brady is literally my age. We went to high school at the same time, but we went to high school across the bay from me. And the fact that he's playing at a high level, I'm not saying Russell Wilson can play into his mid 40s, but it would be nice to see more athletes playing into their latter years because they're a little more smarter. So imagine if Joe Montana and Dan Marino could play into their latter 40s with the knowledge that they had gained instead of their bodies totally breaking down as bad as it did in their latter 30s. So I think we're going to see some really, really exciting football from this next wave of athletes. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is getting into the back nine of his 30s as well, and is not letting up either. So Russell Wilson coming into a system that'll probably be catered to what he wants to do, mixed with a pretty decent running game with Javonte Williams and whoever else they want to put behind him. John Elway has had some great success with undrafted free agents, especially in the running back position. Giving up Shelby Harris hurt. Noah Fant didn't hurt as much because Obequinam, whatever his name is kind of the same player. And I think he actually played a little bit better, but Fant might just be quicker. And maybe that'll work out for him in Seattle. I don't know. I would love to see Von Miller return on a Super Bowl or bust kind of deal. I would love to see Bobby Wagner in the middle. I don't know if those things can happen. There is some cap space. And again, not getting a first round pick for the next few years, I think is going to leave a lot of room. I definitely believe in John Elway when it comes to his ability to draft undrafted free agents and later round picks. We generally have later round picks and undrafted players starting, not just making the team, but starting. So, and this is a draft of depth. So I'm excited on what can be a very, very promising season for the Denver Broncos, despite being in maybe one of the tougher divisions in the game. That being said, I will remove myself from the screen and leave it to you, beautiful young men, to lead us. Thank you.
And I mean, piggybacking off of that, there's I think there's like some things that I like always going to concern about when moving quarterbacks, and that's where in like the coach for the Broncos kind of already stated like we're going to start tailoring systems to players, but where in my head that kind of leaves is the potential for no one really having a good grasp of what's happening, because you can either have a coach that can roll with the punches, players that can roll with the punches, but having those things kind of work congruently, i.e., those first seasons where you start this type of thing, I think they can be a little messy. So yeah, Mac, I'm curious in your take.
I mean,
How
Denver's in a.
solid do you think Denver is going to be, bringing in new QB?
I mean, they're not just bringing a new QB; they're bringing in a new head coach. So everything's changing, right? Like everything, um, they're going to implement new systems. Um, so everybody's going to be in I guess starting from the same spot. Like everybody's going to have to learn a new playbook, right? Everybody on both sides of the ball. And the new head coach is somebody that's ridiculously well respected. Um, I think Russell Wilson's shown an amazing ability to stay healthy, before last year, um, yeah, like Steve said in chat, like Denver has really good wideouts. They've got a good young running back. Jason was right. They typically hit on a couple undrafted running backs that they kind of sack away. Like Philip Lindsay was a Denver product that, had 2 straight 1,000-yard seasons before injuries kind of got the best of him. So, I mean, there's potential for Denver to kind of, turn it around and get into the playoffs this coming season. Now, looking at it right now, Spot Track has Denver with 23 million in cap space as of right now, right? So I don't think you're getting Wagner and Vaughn. I think you're getting one or the other, but you're not getting both. So, for me, I would probably go with Wagner. Miller showed out in LA, but LA has a ton of talent. And then when you get to play next to Aaron Donald, it's going to open up a lot of holes for you to ball out when you're a rushing linebacker, right? So, unless he's got somebody like that, you could see like we were talking about before we started, Father Time gets every football player. Like he gets every athlete. So
and this is something that I didn't expect us to really be able to ever talk about Tom Brady on the sports show that we started a few months ago after he retired.
yeah.
But he is now unretired, which I think it was a few hours after his final touchdown ball, thrown ball, had just been auctioned for over $500,000.
Yeah.
And then a few hours later, there's likely going to be another one of those things.
Yep. I mean, it's no worse than you remember the McGuire Sammy Sosa home run derby, that kind of pulled baseball back from the brink of no one gives a fuck anymore.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Todd
when you
Todd
two steroid
McFarlane.
freaks just
Yeah.
launching baseballs into orbit, it's kind of hard not to watch. But
Yeah, but Todd McFarlane, the guy who created Spawn, ended up spending like $4 million on McGuire's 70th, right? And then what happens 4 years later? Bonds does 73. So
Yeah.
that ball's barely worth anything now. It's just that's what
Yeah.
happens, man. That's what happens.
Fucking holds like crypto.
Yeah.
But no, and that's something where you're kind of before we even started talking about, and this is hopefully go into some of the other picks that you've highlighted as or at least not picks but trades, is that with the offensive line, and I'm going back to late 80s 90s, where it's kind of just a wash. No one really cares, just do your job, shut the hell up. You do have kind of something I think in the 2000s with just the more branding of sports. You start seeing guys like who's it, Tony Saragusa,
Yeah.
kind of making an individual name. But no, we were talking about how offensive line is getting money now.
Yeah.
And not, and like you were saying, left tackles was kind of always a thing. Protecting that blind side is pretty easy. But yeah, now it's starting to spread across the board. And that's what makes Tom Brady be able to, last, is the fact that he's not really getting beat up as much as other quarterbacks or other,
Yeah.
have been. So
I mean, the thing, I think it's great. Like, offensive linemen are finally being recognized for, how important they are. Like, you said left tackles have, you guard the blind side because God forbid you have a left-handed quarterback. So they were getting paid. Baselli was the first like 10 million plus a year left tackle, and left tackles have always made a ton of money. But seriously, in the last 10 years, with kind of like the spread, spread offenses hitting the NFL finally, you realize that you have to pay, like, that should be the strongest unit on your team, right? Um, Brady played behind some very good offensive lines in New England. And who did he throw to? Yeah, he had Randy Moss for 2 seasons, but his biggest targets were a tight end, actually two, but the other guy decided he was just going to run around murdering people. And then, the two slot receivers in Wes Welker and Julius Edelman, right? So those guys aren't going to beat you like straight up one-on-one. Like, they were more, caught balls underneath. They used a lot of picks.
Those are like, I mean, like, those are team plays.
Yeah,
Those aren't skill plays. Those are team plays. That's based off of timing. That's based off of just working together and
yeah,
knowing this person's going to be there, whether I can see them or not. I trust that if I make this pass that I've made 1,000 times, they're going to be there. And that's, I mean, like, that's what really allows Wes Welker to make some of these amazing catches. It's literally like the muscle memory of, I've done this before 1,000 times over and over and over again. And
yeah.
you can't really practice Randy Moss doing a backflip, and then catching
Yeah.
the ball one-handed while his like left pinky toe is like dragging out the end zone.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. Like, teams realize that there's a lot of talent, like especially at the wideout level, wideouts today. You know, you can get very good wideouts to fit into these wide open systems because that's what they played in college. So the route tree isn't going to be that different. The terminology isn't going to be that different. So it's kind of more of a seamless market. When you got to think, 15 years ago, wideouts were some of the hardest uh, players to project coming in from college. Like, you had, like, look, Braylon Edwards, right? That dude was supposed to be a great pick by the Browns. And if there was a bust at wideout in the last 15 years, there isn't really much bigger than Edwards.
Yeah. Is
You
it the
know,
player? Is it the Browns? That's always going to be the question. But yeah, there's
yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a fair point. That is a fair point. But like, you're seeing like players like Michael Gallup. He wasn't like a big name. He's gonna make some money this year. Welker, Edelman, like those guys were. Edelman was a 6th-round pick, and he played quarterback in college. Like, he went to Kent State. Welker played at Texas Tech. He was a throw-in to the Dolphins in a trade, and had a couple good years there, but he exploded when he went to New England. Um, so like, you're seeing a lot more talent come up from the lower rounds of the draft, but these teams know we have to pay a lot of money to keep the quarterback upright so he can pass it, to these guys, or do his fucking job, right? So, yeah, man, like Mitch Morse, he is a center, just signed a 2-year, $19.5 million extension, 12 mil guaranteed. Let's see. The big one, I was the Bengals signed Alex Kappa from Tampa, 4 years, 35 mil, 20 mil in the first 2 years, and Ted Karras from the Pats, 3 years, 18 mil. Karras can play all over the line. Like, he's played every position. So like, having that kind of flexibility is nice, but he's probably going to play guard in Cincy. And Kappa, like, that's a huge get from Tampa,
Do you guys think it is worth it to pay a guy more that can move around the line, i.e., a guy that can play both tackle positions, or at the very least, a right tackle that can move around the guard spots?
yeah. And then, yes. And like, this is where having a guy that can move around, I mean, like, it just makes the line more dynamic. And like, if you can get two guys that can jump, then you can really stretch your offensive line as far as rotating guys in. because like that's the thing too, is that I think like the depth like within teams, and that's something that's like I think bleeding over from the college game as well, is like if you can just rotate a few guys through that you can lean on just to give some guys a breather at that point, then like you're making your offense a whole lot more dynamic. And then like too is like injuries,
Yeah.
that's one of the bigger things, is that because you could have your starting left guard could also be your better second string right tackle.
Yeah.
Like these are things that just can happen. And so having somebody that can do both, which is difficult too, is like it depends on the playbook, on because that also too might just change dynamics as far as what somebody else is able to do in those positions, and how does that constrict the playbook. So
Yeah, I mean, just look at the Browns 2 years ago. They had the best graded offensive line in the NFL. Last season, when injuries just devastated Cleveland, like they couldn't go a week without losing a starter, and it showed. When you have a guy like Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, they're going to get their yards no matter who's in front of them. They're just that good. But like you could tell that the toll it was taken on Chubb. He spent a lot of time injured, and then on top of that, 2 years ago the Browns like led the league in plays of 20 yards or more. Like they just were able to hit these home runs, man, and just they weren't able to do it last season. I mean, it doesn't help that you had teams literally stacking the box, because they knew Baker couldn't get it 10 yards down the field. And again, this goes to spending your draft capital well, with Cleveland's wideouts, like even with Odell like down, like he wasn't going to really change that wide receiver core, because it's not it's eh. Like I really like Donovan Peoples-Jones, but like Anthony Schwartz, they literally drafted him for speed, and that dude, you could stick him on his hands and he would still manage to fucking drop the ball, right?
toss him on defense.
Yeah.
Just fucking toss him on defense.
It's just and then Jarvis Landry, who was released after the Amari Cooper pickup, and we can talk about that in a few minutes. Like Landry's a nice slot receiver. Like he was never going to beat you downfield, but he's a very smart route runner. He's very short-handed, but like you don't pay slot receivers 10 to 12 mil, man. You don't do that. If you're getting that kind of money, you're the guy that can stretch the field. You're catching 10 touchdown passes a year. You're pulling down 1,200 receiving yards. Like they'll get it. Landry has had a few 1,000-yard seasons, and he's not what you would call like a guy who, gonna score a lot of touchdowns.
And that's like the thing is like if you can't if you can't pull down touchdowns, you need to be pulling a double team at least. And if so, like if you're not at least a threat, then like you're pretty much worth. You're like at that point, like what good are you?
But yeah, that was. I mean, I thought like for me, Russell Wilson, like that trade at first, dude. Like I was like, I don't know, man. They gave up a lot, and then I sat down and thought about it for a few days, dude. And I'm like, I'm an idiot. This is actually a really good trade. The Broncos made out like bandits, like.
Well, and like I don't know if you got any things for where do you see Seattle, and because like in my head it just seems like Pete Carroll's like basically just saying like, hey, we're just gonna hit the reset button.
Yeah, I honestly I think that's what you're absolutely right, Marcus. They're gonna reboot. They have done a horrible job of picking players, probably the last 10 years, man. Like their drafting is atrocious in Seattle. A lot of that Schneider, who I don't know how the owner of the Seahawks deals with his ass, because he's just bad at his job. That's like literally a white dude that fell into success, and he continues to fail into success.
In America? Come
on. But like the thing is I can see them trying to spin off like guys like Tyler Lockett. I could see him trying to move DK Metcalf just for picks, because that cupboard's bare and they need to fill it up quick. And the only way they're going to be able to do that is through the draft.
And I mean, and like I guess we'll see. Yeah, if Carroll can kind of like put together like the same like quick magic that he was able when he first started out at Seattle.
Or he could just do like he did at USC and pay people under the table and,
Hey man,
break a few rules.
hey, as long as you don't get caught, did you do anything wrong?
Yeah, I
As
mean, this
long as you
isn't.
can move, as long as you can leave your coaching position at USC, go to the NFL, completely leave the university, just absolutely fucked. Did you do anything wrong? Come on. But I think the last one we mentioned was Khalil Mack going to the Chargers, who now going to be partner up with our boy from the
That's
Ohio
right.
State University,
That's right,
Joey
Joey.
Bosa. So I mean, that might be one of the more dominant defensive lines that we're going to be seeing next year.
It's going to be absolutely batshit crazy because, like, Bosa can't play off the line, right? Like, you can't have him dropping back in coverage. It's just not his cup of tea. Khalil Mack's played a down 4, a down defensive end in a 4-3. He's also played a stand-up linebacker in a 3-4. So, like, you're going to have that versatility. You're going to have two, arguably, of the top pass rushers in the NFL the last 10 years on one defensive line. And, like, the Chargers just signed J.C. Jackson from New England, and Jackson's led the league in interceptions the last 3 years. So, like, their defense is going to be stupid good. And you got to think, playing in the AFC West, where you have Mahomes in Kansas City, you got Carr in Vegas, and now you got Russell in Denver. Like, you have this ability. They're going to have this great ability to pressure those quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So that's what you need.
That's AFC South. Yeah, that's where it's at.
AFC West.
AFC West. Yeah. Like that's where it's at for sure. Like the talent there is like ridiculous now. But then that's the thing. Is like my only question, right, would be, I would be pushing Bosa now more than ever to, and this is like going back to Ohio State. Like they haven't had him try to do offline, but I would be pushing now for it like more than ever, and only really bringing it out in like a few positions, because there's always going to be the plays where you got them down, like got them like nailed the rights, and like I think that's when you can count on Bosa to make a play.
Yeah.
And so yeah, even though he's not too good at it, like that would be what I'd have in my back pocket. Really, even holding Khalil Mack off the line, having him do the split blitz, and then having Bosa just drop back and like really like changing the game, because they're not like that's I don't know, like I'm not.
Well, it's going to be
genius,
crazy to see who gets doubled in all this, right?
Yes.
Because you can't. If you're going to double one, you're leaving the other guy one-on-one.
And then like that's something too. It's like once like that can be drawn, like called on the line. I mean, you could even come up with like, this is the thing too. It's like those are quick code word changes too. Like you could be saying one thing in the first quarter until a totally different thing in the second quarter, and like the offensive line is going to be the wiser, because it's a simple motion, of just trading off of like, hey, I'm doubled, you go, versus you're doubled, I go. And I don't know. I mean, like, I hope the ambulances are ready at Chargers games, because it might be a bloodbath.
I mean, and those 6 Chargers fans that are there watching it, we're going to be really excited.
There's going to be space for the paramedics.
That's right. There's going to be a lot of room to move a gurney. I mean, that's what kills me. The Rams and Chargers both play at SoFi, right? And the Rams fans, they put asses in seats. And then when you look at like when the Chargers have a home game, you see more of the people that are playing fans there than actual Chargers fans. And I'm like, who said this was a good idea? Like, this was so bad. This was awful. Like, honestly, you got to like when they were bringing teams back to LA, the Raiders were actually like in line to be that team, right? Like they were supposed to be the team to go with the Rams back to LA. And then Davis was like, no, like we're going to be playing in, Stan Kroenke's house, like the stadium he built. Right. I think they were trying to go to like another smaller suburb outside. And then the NFL is just like, no, Kroenke said he's going to put up some money. So you either play there or, you just stay in Oakland. And Davis was like, all right, fuck it. I'll go talk to Vegas. And then that's, that's where he ended up. So, it just dumbfounds me. Like, I get it, like they weren't the biggest draw in San Diego, but like, what would you rather be? Like number one in a town, or like they're
It-
like fifth in LA. You have like the Rams, USC, UCLA. You know,
and this is where, like we just need to get some equilibrium. We need to start treating sports teams like the Senate. Each state gets
gets
one
two. Oh,
or two. You get but I guess these in the same league you get one, right? You're only getting one NFL team. You're only getting one NBA team. How you disperse that, California, sorry, eat shit, right? You don't get representation in the Senate, you're not getting it in the NFL either. So
yeah.
that's my fucking take on it,
Like,
because
dude, I mean, that would be great. Fargo, finally would get their team.
hell yeah.
You know,
Hell yeah. Because
we,
that's the thing. Yeah, it's they only have two home games that are like that, in for the North Dakota team, it's all structured around non-harvest season, and then also the state fair, right? Just to make sure you got
yeah,
enough people
yeah,
to pack in the stands. We got to do this differently, where it's got to be spread out.
yeah. I mean, we can make a special like division for like Idaho, Wyoming, the Dakotas.
Yeah.
Actually, if we're doing this, I vote the Dakotas get a combined one team.
Well,
All
I
right.
think that's fair. That's fair. Um, well, and I think the last thing that we do got to talk about on the NFL is Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. Um, here's the kicker with Watson. He got cleared of all the criminal charges, right? The civil cases are still pending, and there's 22 of those.
Yes.
Um, like he's going to get traded. I really think it was just the criminal cases that were hanging over him that kept him from being moved last year. But I think now that that's out of the way, he's going to get moved. And I told you guys where I think he's going to go. I really think Cleveland's going to pull the trigger and move for Watson.
You think it's gonna be Cleveland?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you've seen what you get with Baker Mayfield. I think if he's feeling good about himself, he could be a really good quarterback, right? But I just don't think he's the guy that's going to get the Browns over the hump. And the Browns are built to win right now, right? Like they're built to win. They got a pretty good offense. They just picked up Amari Cooper. I can see them maybe drafting another Ohio State, one of the Ohio State wideouts in the first round this year. Um, they're going to put some weapons to kind of take the heat off of Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. The offensive line's very stout. The defense is really good when injuries aren't a factor, right? But like literally Mayfield is the weak link there. And I could see, honestly, Mayfield being part of that trade, just to maybe offset some salary. And,
Yeah.
that way Houston could say, look, we have a young quarterback, and they could let him play out the year on that last year on his rookie contract and then
Yeah.
see if he's the dude that can, kind of grow with the Texans.
He's not, but okay. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
the play makes sense. Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, it's the other teams that really need QBs like Carolina. He's not going to win there. Like Christian McCaffrey is probably getting moved this offseason too. And there's a lame duck coach in Carolina, like Matt Rule, probably should have just stayed in college, but he's one of those college guys. It's like, I could win anywhere. And it's like, no bitch, you cannot. So pump the brakes, dude. And then like the Saints, they're in salary cap hell, even with some of the moves and restructurings they've done. They're still like, I think 40 million over the cap. The new guy down in Miami said that he's going to stick with Tua. So like there's not a lot of moving space for him to go now. Like people, like I've heard people say, Seattle is a possible stop, but they're going to be rebuilding. So, I mean, I just don't see, I really think Cleveland is going to be the one that pulls the trigger to to bring him on board.
Yeah, and like and for those like not privy to what was going on, he was accused by like around 24 massage therapists for a plethora of just
Yeah.
indecent behavior to sexual assault. And a lot of, it's like there's a lot of things where it's like literally 22 women, similar stories from him, yeah, all sorts of shit. I don't really don't want to fucking get into it.
Yeah, it
Um,
was some creepy shit. Like that's
yeah,
exactly what it was. It
yeah,
was straight sex pest shit.
yes. And this is where like I mean, like you just see the world for like really what it is that the fact that it's like when like the Black Lives Matter movement, when you talk about Me Too and like what are the actual results from these like huge popularized movements, and it's everything is still large like working the same as it ever did. And you've got this dude like literally sexually assaulting multiple women in a professional setting, and he's just, oh hey, like no big deal. Not going to be too surprised if sometime later down the road there's a whole lot of money moving around.
Yep.
There's a whole lot of, hey, if you shut up you get this, type of stuff going on. But that you don't and like this is the thing is like one woman comes forward and then the next thing you know there's like dozens of other people who are corroborated like the dates, times, like what this motherfucker was wearing, and then hey, and this is where it's like you're gonna see this like good old boys judge just say, well, those women they probably wanted it because he's a rich athlete, and I was like, no, like this is not how
Yeah.
fucking life works,
Yeah. I mean, it's just like all the shit going down at Louisiana State right now. Like that whole uh fiasco where like the legal firm the university hired to do like the independent investigation found out like the cops, the local and state judge in those districts were ignoring a lot of the the crimes, the sexual, and 99% of them were of sexual harassment, sexual assault. They were just saying, like, just like you said, oh well, you know how were, like, one of the judges actually asked how some of the women were dressed.
oh
like
my
like that's
fucking god,
a
in
predicating
the
factor.
year of our
Yeah.
Lord 2022.
Yep.
Fucking hell. So and like that's where like I hope this guy does like I hope fucking no like he's gonna get fucking picked up. He's gonna go on, make millions of fucking dollars. These women to get no justice whatsoever. Um the league rolls on, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. I've seen people on Twitter that are like, well, he's going to get suspended, and I'm like, no, he's not.
No, he's not.
He's not pending any criminal charges. And like somebody in chat already said, you think the NFL gives a shit about civic matters?
No.
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 Not even a little bit.
They, let me like straight up, the NFL doesn't have end racism on their helmets because they want to end racism.
Yeah.
Okay? They want to sell tickets. They will do the bare minimum that they have to sell tickets.
Yep. They want everybody to feel warm and fuzzy, like doing the traditional lib thing. Like, look, I ain't on a shirt, and I'm doing something important. People see me carrying this message, and it's like, but have you done anything?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is too is like there's usually not also like this the surrounding culture that's actually like call out dog shit behavior. But you can find that here on Beyond the Red Zone. So
That's right.
hey,
That's right.
Sean
Look,
Watson,
the NFL wants to end racism and jealousy.
Is that what they want?
racism and jealousy. But as far as leagues moving along, last story of the day, Major League Baseball,
That's
America's pastime about 100 years ago, is back. They've come to a deal. Yeah, what and like and from what I've heard, At least they're not missing too many games. They're figure out like schedule and like pack them all in and everything like
Yeah.
that. Designated hitter is now the law of the land.
As it should always have been, because watching pitchers hit, I would rather get hit in the dick with like a Gallagher mallet than watching pitchers flailing up at the plate trying to hit something.
It's just like, oh hey, every third field goal, the coach has to do it, and it's like, why? But yeah, I don't know. What's your take?
Well,
how does this come out? Was this a win? Was this a win for baseball labor?
in a way, yeah. They raised the minimum pay, right? So going into this coming season, the minimum salary is going to be $700,000, and in the final year of the collective bargaining agreement, it's going to be 780.
Mhm.
So, I mean that's a win, right? Because typically your younger players are going to be, your younger players or you're older, not at the beginning or the end of your career, like that's where you're going to be at, right? But like the congression or the competitive baseball tax, which is essentially like the thing that a lot of owners said, well, we can't break it because like it's a tax on every dollar you spend, right? So every dollar you spend over the CBT, you have to pay $1 to the league, and it goes into a pot that ostensibly goes to small market teams. And keep in mind, like Cleveland is owned by the third richest man in the league, but it's small market. So, but yeah, sans culottes, it's essentially the equivalent of the NBA luxury tax, but a little different, right? So the owners didn't want to raise it, but it's going to be $230 million in 2023, and it'd be all the way up to $204 million in the final year of the CBA. So this is going to like open up for players to make more money, right?
Yeah.
They got a pre-arbitration eligible player bonus pool of $50 million now. And they expanded the postseason again to 12 teams, which, all right, dude, like the MLB wanted 14 teams, like the league wanted 14 teams, which would be like 44% of the league would make the playoffs.
It's NBA rules, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Everybody gets a win.
But I mean, 12 teams is good. And it's also going to open up, I think they said like $85 million in extra revenue, right? By just adding those two teams to the playoffs.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's more money in the pool for the players to make. And then there's also like, this shit, that the baseball traditionalists, and by baseball traditionalists, I mean the angry old white dudes that are going to be pissing and moaning about this, but like, the universal DH, I've already seen people like whining about that. They're having, they're going to expand the size of the bases. I don't quite understand what that does, but okay. And you're also going to see ads on uniforms now. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot like it is in Japan.
Hell yeah.
That's what the owners want. The owners want.
Man, fuck it. I want that's the thing. Like the only issue I have is that the politicians don't do the same. Like everything like NASCAR. Let's see who owns you.
Oh yeah, dude, and they should have to wear jumpsuits like they do in NASCAR. Like fuck the suits. I want to see all your sponsors. Let me know. So
yeah. I want to see just fucking Joe Manchin wearing like just covered in oil walking into Congress
with like a Pfizer patch on his shoulder.
Yeah.
Burping up.
But no, I mean, that's interesting. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and it's another means. The thing is, with all these new revenue streams, the players are going to get a cut of it. Like that was a big thing for them. It's like, okay, you want the extra playoff game that's going to get you guys $85 million extra. Guess what? We get a cut.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. You want ads on uniforms? Cool. We're going to get X amount of percent, X percent of larger ones, and then we'll take a smaller cut of like smaller secondary sponsors. Right. Like this, we were talking about last time, these players are not fucking stupid. Like they stuck to their guns, and they gave a little, but I think overall this is probably the best possible outcome for being locked out, right? Like I think this was the best they were going to get, you know.
Yeah.
I don't think even if even if they went on strike, I don't know if they would have gotten this good of a deal, honestly. Because whether we like it or not, yes, these players, a lot of them are very wealthy. But who's got a bigger war chest? The fucking owners do. Their war chests is far deeper. It's far more expansive than the players. So,
Which
I mean, I like I said, I think this is the best that they could have gotten on these circumstances.
one thing before we close out though is this is my question, and like one of my frustrations with like Major League Baseball specifically, game time.
Yeah.
Is there anything is there anything in this deal, and does putting the ads on the jerseys instead of like in the time for like what is there anything that they're doing about this to actually make the game a little bit faster?
Yeah, you gotta like the two things that like from last season, the last 2 seasons, like the COVID affected years, I should say, is they had 7-inning doubleheaders, and then you had runners starting on second base in every inning after the 9th inning, right? So when you went into extra innings, like this was supposed to speed up pace of play. Both of those things have been eliminated. So we're back to 9-inning doubleheaders. We're back to regular extra innings, because Rob Manfred has made it very. He wants no part of actually speeding up the game, no matter how much he says it in person. He watch some of his fucking interviews. He's like, I understand this is the digital age, and it really hurts me when I look at in the stands and I see people on their phones. And, I realize that we have to do something as Major League Baseball to make it an entire experience, right?
More hot dogs sprinting.
Yeah.
More hot dog races.
Yeah, more kiss cam,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't fucking know, man. But it's nuts to me that he's that disingenuous, because was it different? Yeah, but I'll tell you right now, if I can, in the 10th inning, you have a runner start on second, there's a possibility of getting through this thing. I mean, you're a fucking parent too, Marcus. Take your kids to a baseball game, even a minor league baseball game. By the third, they're like, "Yo, pops, can we get the fuck out of here?" But you're like, I just spent a shit ton of money for us to do this, and we're fucking sitting here.
That popcorn was $8. This beer was $13, and I'm not done yet.
Well, I will tell you a story that I was told some time ago when I was working at a music festival at the Las Vegas Speedway called EDC. It is the largest, at the time, it was the largest festival in North America, about 175,000 people a day. Electric Daisy Carnival, that's what it stands for. It's a great big rave. And
yeah, probably why I didn't go. I'm just not interested in that.
Oh, it's not. I mean, I was working. Sometimes my job at that time, my job took me to different music festivals throughout the country. And that's also where I found out that you cannot take a golf cart on a racetrack. Found out the hard way almost. Racetracks do this shit.
Oh, yeah.
No matter how fast you go in the golf cart, you will fall and probably die. Don't do that. Learn from me, children.
Take the governor off it.
One of the things, because I got to be with some of the higher ups of the company that ran the food and beverage of actually most stadiums. There's a very convoluted relationship between stadiums and teams and events, and I don't think most people understand that relationship. And I won't get into it. It's every place is different, right?
Yeah, it's hell.
Municipalities
Some of those
so
contracts, Jason, are fucking miserable to look through.
they're very, very, especially when you have like a city and a county involved. It's different. It's more complex than people think. But anyway, they were having a problem with people showing up to NASCAR races. Now, I thought to myself, yeah, who the fuck shows up to NASCAR? Who the fuck shows up to races in general, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we're trying to get in a younger demographic. So we're ripping out these seats here. We're going to have a pool, like a waiting pool. And then we're going to have a different luxury box thing. And if you go into newer stadiums, there's just so much to do at a newer stadium because people across the board don't want to sit down and watch the game. That was one of the early complaints about the newer Giants ballpark when they built one in downtown San Francisco, opposed to the other one that was like this nightmarish, frighteningly cold in the summer. You know, it's built for football, so the stands are super high. I'm never going to catch a foul ball.
Jason, I've been to Candlestick. I've been to Candlestick twice.
So for a baseball game?
Yeah, for baseball and a football game. And you're not kidding. Like during the summer, like you need to have a fucking hoodie and a jacket.
Yep.
And then like during like winters, like I don't know, maybe it's just like the shit off the bay, you know. But like I remember like taking a hoodie, you know, and heading out to the game and just being covered in sweat by fucking halftime. You know,
the first time I got sunburnt was at a 49er game. I went to watch 49ers Broncos and I got sunburned. I was like, oh, I guess we can sunburn. My mother lied. And Mom, you also lied about white people smelling like wet dog and bologna in the pool.
Wait, did your mom say that they don't smell like wet dog and bologna?
Hey Marcus, that's fucked up because like that's how they target Axe body spray at us white folks. Okay, we got to cover that up, man.
The new Giant Stadium was the knock on it was that people left by the seventh inning, much like Dodger Stadium. People were not engaged in the game like they were at the old stadium. I remember the old stadium had fights. Like legitimate people were getting fucked up. So it's interesting to see what people want to do when building a new stadium, because now your whole thing is how do we keep the interest of families? So even at the new stadium, there was like a playground for kids.
This is the thing. It's like back in the this is the just the weakening of our country, okay? Because he used to be able to slap his kid in public and tell him to sit down and shut the fuck up. Right? That's how they learned to love the game.
And it was scary for me to move because the seats are so high. And some friends and I would go to the Charger Stadium. Speaking of, you were talking about the Chargers. You could get Charger Bronco tickets relatively cheap on a secondary market, like over 15 years ago, probably. And we would drive down to San Diego and go watch the game. And a buddy who actually relocated down there, he called me up and we were reminiscing about the good old days of making these road trips to see football games. And he said, do you remember when that dude fell? And the stadium, the Charger Stadium, was so high that a dude fell, because you know how it gets kind of fucked up, maybe 4 or 5 levels down.
Oh goddamn!
And he wasn't being crazy. He was just like, yeah, and he tumbled.
Damn.
And he fell on the lap of a young white girl, like a child. And and she did what anyone would do. She just went, oh! And the guy got scared. He was fine. He was kind of like a roach on his back. He was like, he jumps off the girl, and the girl's dad is like, are you okay, to his daughter, and of course to this man. And then the man's like, I'm fine. And they shake hands. And then the white guy is doing like this, like, hey, found a black guy in San Diego.
Oh my god.
So these new stadiums are designed so much better and they're so much more comfortable. And like, I get it. I've been in a few newer ones for some of the events that I've done. I watched the national championship a few years ago when it was in San Francisco at the
At Levi.
at Levi. Levi's okay. You know, I definitely had some issues with what I do with their setup. But I get it, man. We live in a new era where people are not going to be stimulated by the event itself. That's for a whole different person. And generally that person can't afford to go to the game. Sadly.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, like, if you guys remember a couple years back, the Alliance of American Football.
Yes.
Right? Now, Charlie Ebersol essentially built the league around an app, right? Like, everybody's gear essentially had a chip, okay? And so in this app, you could literally watch the game just on the app and it would move. Like, everybody would move. Like, it would run the play for you on this app. And it was buddied up with a gambling app. So, like, literally you can change bets or add bets as you're watching everything unfold. Now, when the league went under, okay, you got to keep in mind the Carolina Hurricanes owner ended up buying the majority interest. And essentially he bought the league for the app. That's what he wanted.
Interesting.
He's like, that is where the money's at. So when it goes into bankruptcy and like he's calling into Charlie Ebersol and all the other, you know, moving pieces of the AAF. And he's like, well, I need some of the cash I put up back. He wanted that app. But the bankruptcy court judge was like, nah, dude, that's not how this shit works. This stuff goes to auction to pay off the creditors of the league. So MGM ended up getting their hands on it. So now at this point, MGM's trying to essentially partner up, as we've seen legalized sports gambling kind of like starting to spread.
Really?
They're starting to buddy up with all these, with like MLB,
Straight
NFL,
up leagues.
NBA, yeah, to have this app put into like every game. So like I said, as if you're a gambler, which I'm not, I never really got into it. I like drinking booze. That's my vice. And, you know,
So, I mean, like, this is the thing is like, there could, so like, potentially they're going to be like, press this button now to make a bet to see if the wide receiver catches this ball.
Yeah. I mean,
whoa,
there's going to be
bets on the fly.
Yeah, there's going to be stuff like that. You're gonna be able to like have secondary bets. Like, say you take, you know, Denver over the Chiefs and you take the points, right? It will allow you to place a second bet from this app, right? Based on how the play, you know, like I said, you're watching everybody's movement. Is this guy's little peg or whatever moving slower? Obviously he's injured, so I have to take that into account and put another bet down. Yeah, you know,
that's insane.
Throw 5 on the
wearable technology for gambling.
Yep.
They make science fiction movies out of shit like this.
I mean, I think a fucking Elon Musk chip is better in a helmet than it is someone's head. So like, if they can use it for that. But
all I'm saying is Teslas catch on fire quite often. I can only imagine what a brain chip's going to do when that catches on fire.
Did I tell you, Marcus, that my buddy drove down here? He was not just to my house, but he was driving. He just bought a Tesla, and he wanted to drive it to Ensenada, which is like a really beautiful city, a little south of me, like 40 minutes south of me. And he pulls up in the Tesla and he goes, just give me your address. I was like, you're not gonna find it. He's like, well, I got this new Tesla, so I give him the address. And sure enough, he was like down the street, around the corner. He definitely was not at my home. And I was like, my home is so stalker proof.
Yes.
Yeah. You say that now until the NFT guys start coming at you.
Yeah.
Yo, man, they went after Adult Swim. They straight up went after Adult Swim. Some crypto douche was like, Adult Swim needs to make a cartoon based on the NFT monkeys, like right now. And like literally in the next frame, they were like, yeah, we need to do that. Like, we need a hole in our head. And then like the dude whose tweet they quoted, like, got on Twitter, was like, they've just made a lifelong enemy. All of us that are in NFTs need to go after Adult Swim and Comedy Central. And I'm just like, oh my God.
Crypto people, or is it the same people?
It's just like, well, the dude who they put his tweet up on Adult Swim like when he saw that, he got butthurt, and then like all these crypto nerds were like, "Oh yeah, man, we could take it to them. You know, we're just gonna start like making NFTs of all their properties and da 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 da. You know, they can't sue us for that." And like, there was like an attorney that popped up, like an IP attorney was like, "They can most certainly sue you, and they're owned by Viacom, dude. None of you guys are gonna get away with this." You know, and there's anyway,
like this whole like. We did a show. Marcus was on the show with Dr. Michael Harris, and Dan Larson joined us, and we talked about science fiction movies, and part of that kind of the theme of Michael Harris's upcoming book is that Blade Runner is now. It is the past, even. Like that is the world we live in.
That's like one of the most disturbing parts of like reading, Dr. Harris is that when he's kind of saying like, hey, this is how capitalism can reflect some of these movies that you watched, like V for Vendetta or RoboCop or Blade Runner. Back to the, he's like, hey, but guess what? It's not in the future. It's right now. And you're like, oh fuck.
I think I sent you the book too, Mac.
Yeah. I'm finishing up Dope Sick right now. So when I finish that book, I'm gonna tackle the one he sent me. But I'm trying to only do one book at a time because I'm the guy that starts like 6 books at a time, and I never end up finishing them in a timely manner. So like, I forgot about what led into this, so I have to go back and reread it. So
Marcus can tell you that this is Revolution book library that we get for the show, which is about to expand. There's a new book I'm trying to get us for a show about palm oil.
Oh, that man! Yeah. There's so much shit there.
It looks very interesting. So,
well, if you want to talk about like a really big one, Jason, talk about the CFA, which is essentially the colonial franc that France forces their former colonies in West Africa to use. I've got a book that that's on my shelf to read, but like it goes into how it happened and why they're still being forced to use it. And there's very nefarious reasons for it. So
Robert would love that. And I have another book I have to send you, Marcus. There's another book. It's for April. I've been lagging on sending it. I apologize.
Well, I mean, if it's for April, like you're in the
I was gonna say, man, this is like
a new leaf. Like he's like Jason has turned a new leaf. If it's for a show in April and you're sending it me now, like that's the fix. Then that's what I've been asking for.
Well, I got to get on my shit because Doug Lane. I was supposed to get interviewed by Doug Lane today, and he got backed up with work. And the last conversation we had, he goes, "Jason," like, yes. He goes, "Write a book." It's like.
And this is like all you got to do to write a book is keep writing your articles and don't publish them.
That's how I've been. The living in a world without attaboys is it feels good sometimes to be like, I accomplished something today.
I did something. I'm helping.
Before we
I want to make it clear though that just because you send me the books, with me giving me enough time to actually like read them and think about them, I'm still gonna read them the day prior.
The day before. Yeah. I was gonna say, Marcus, we shamed him into finally getting it to you in a timely fashion. But if you're just going to continue to read them the day before, then you know what? You reap what you sow, my friend.
Well, and that's the thing though, is that it's like I just like to talk shit. I like to find reasons to talk shit.
That is a very fair reason, though. And Mac, that is an extremely. I'm talking like sometimes. 2 hours for the show. Sorry, Marcus. I swear you got the book. Well, hey, it's only 160 pages. You're fine. Oh yeah, the introduction is 50 pages. Don't worry about it. Just
Jason,
intros,
you with a pillow if you did that to me.
Intro's the fuck out of here. It's like basically it's the top and bottom of each chapters is what I'm usually getting into.
The top sentence. That's it. Just the
Yeah,
top
it's like, yeah, really, it's like the top 2-3 sentences of saying in this chapter I will, and then like
Yeah.
at the end of it, like the last page for sure, like you need to be wrapping this shit up, and it's like, okay, I get it. Boom, next.
Listen, all you need to do is have the thesis down and then get something from like what they've gleaned in their work, and you could bullshit the rest.
Well, actually,
You guys are trying to give up. There's a lot. Look, I'll tell you this much. This is a true story. Cedric Johnson was a big guest I had on my show some time ago, a few years ago. And I didn't read Revolutionaries, but I read every article I could find, everything he wrote. And before someone writes a book, they generally write a bunch of scholarly articles. And I read every one I could find, and I was quoting them while we were talking. And at the end of that, we talked for like 5 hours. And he calls Teray because, hey, I met this guy, this Jason Miles guy is really cool. And Teray listens to the show. He goes, you actually read the work. He goes, every show I go on, they never read my book. And because of that, I will fucking sit there and read as much as I humanly can, because when you do the reading and they come on, they appreciate that on a whole nother level, and you get a better conversation.
Yeah.
Which
So
it was a few Saturdays ago. You weren't there. Who's the guy?
Anton Yeager.
Yeah, post politics and the hyper
It
politics.
was a good show. A clip is coming out of that pretty soon.
Oh,
it's up already. It's up already, but that was a good show.
So that's, I mean, like Pascal was trying to get into the details, and like me and Stefan were like, nah, like I just want to know more about this hyper politics stuff. Of like, what's like, because talk about where we're at now. I don't know. I'm big on that. Now we're just kind of dragging on though, and we're gonna.
I'm sorry, but yeah,
no. I mean, like, I'm okay with it. I think I got it.
This look. I told these guys before when I was like, I'm trying to keep it at an hour. I will say this, and thank you guys all for listening to the show. This show, out of all the TIR Present shows, is doing the best audio only numbers by far.
Well, it's because Marcus has a beautiful voice and he's a handsome man.
You're just too good to be true.
I'm having so much fun with this show. If my daughter was home earlier on days like this, we would make it a strict call-in show, because I definitely want to get to that point where we do more call-ins. Maybe if Mac and Marcus, if we can work things out, then it's to last a little longer, then we'll try to work out some sort of call-in feature, because I definitely want to get your guys' voice on this show, because this is something we can feel a little bit good about, and we can have civil debates. Our Saturday, speaking of civil debates, our Saturday show was so much fun. I love whenever Esperanza comes on and she'll hit me up after the fact, I'm like, dude, thank you so much. I love the pushback. And that was
which, and I'll say, I had a conversation with someone, and about some of like the pushback that Esperanza gets, and like, I think Pascal like did a good job of like even kind of addressing that.
Yeah.
But that's one of those things where like there is discussion to be had. I don't even like using debate anymore. It's ruined.
Yeah.
It's fucked up. But there's a very serious discussion to be had. On the left of like where do we want to go?
Mm-hmm.
What policies do we want to support? How are we making sure that we're actually supporting marginalized communities? If it, when it comes to whether it's immigrants, whether it comes to Black people, whether it comes to women, when it comes to trans, non-binary folks, when it comes to whatever, and when it comes to sex workers, I think that there's just a little bit more of a serious conversation that needs to be had. And I'm not saying Esperanza is 100% right. I'm not saying that anybody else is 100% right. But the things that are happening on the ground, and that they can always be improved. And I think that like there's a very serious fucking conversation. And for dudes who enjoy watching and indulging in sex work, right? As the consumer, we're gonna need to start taking a real hard look at ourselves as we move forward.
Yeah, and I know this particular person is like kind of sets leftists off, but John Oliver, say what you want about him, his show is fucking amazing. When it comes to like the main topic breakdown, and last week's was about sex work, and he brought up 3 possibilities that the pros and cons of all of them, right? So for him, he brought up complete legalization. Then you had complete like banning, and then
the Swedish model,
yeah, and then you had what he called the middle road, which is just decriminalization. And by that, it's not just it's not just the fact that we're going to decriminalize, like Marcus said, me the consumer, like you can't bust me for going to seek out sex work. Decriminalization also involves the sex worker not being under threat of arrest for plying their trade. And like there is like, and this is one of the things on the left we really have to sit down and talk about, because of all the things we scream into the void on the internet about, or on our favorite streams and whatnot, it seems like sex work is like one of those things that really sets the left on fire, as far as like people getting butthurt and just screaming at each other. Because you have some leftists that are like, nope, sex work can never be actually work, because there is somebody that is, taking advantage of another person, right? Then you have someone like me, who I have friends that are sex workers, and for them it is work. It's how they, pay their bills, and they're not being forced into it. They're just like, I do this. I have OnlyFans. I have a friend who is a captain in the Army. She does videos of her feet, and she makes like $12,000 a month doing it.
I think there's a huge
Yeah.
thick line between that person and the person that is forced into sucking a dick.
Yeah,
I've cleaned a lot of toilets. It's not fun.
Yeah,
Never
but I
had to suck
agree with you, Jason. I agree with you there. Like the hardest part of this is going to be making sure that sex workers have a safe enough place to do their work without having that person that co-ops them into doing it through violence or other means, right?
And that's and this is where like I think the caution of like the full-fledged, like one, there's this like be cautious of sloganeering and what can be co-opted. That's one, right? Because Black Lives Matter can be co-opted into a bunch of fucking silly ass shit that doesn't really make any fucking difference. And so going to like this, like, hey, full on, sex workers work. I think what, at least from, like from my perspective of what Esperanza is saying, is to make sure that that's not being co-opted to make sure that they legalize pimping,
Well, that's
so like
ultimately what happens, and there's a very exploitive nature, especially again the view that what Mac is talking about, and when you're talking about someone that's dealing with shit from a global perspective, especially the global South, when people say things like, well, sex work is work and all work is exploitive, again, I don't think we're talking about the same things.
And that's there's a fucking line, there's a fucking very fucking hard line,
very,
between
very, very different line. But what happens is, I think sometimes certain voices get louder than other voices, and everything becomes an amorphous term. And there's a reason why that term was invented, to make it amorphous, so you can't make the distinction. And as long as we don't have any sort of distinction, as long as there's massive exploitation, it's a problem that's beyond like, oh, just get a union. Like
because there's just a huge difference between sex content creation, which is and can still be extremely exploitative, right? Like that we can understand that, and like global sex trafficking, like
or just where I live. If I go 20 minutes up the road into TJ, there's literally an industry that's really, really sad that people don't choose. It chooses you, as the young people say.
Yeah.
But
that's where those, like, I mean, Jason, you are I think one of the more serious. You're a it's hard to say it because you're not serious a lot of the time, but when it comes to like actually taking the topics at hand seriously, and actually and like that's the thing too is like sometimes it's like okay to be forced into feeling discomfort, right? It's okay, and like we need to understand it's like the only way you get to correct is not to stamp your feet and demand that you're correct, right?
Yeah.
It's opening up to maybe I was wrong, and like that's as especially too. It's like if you're talking about on the left, we're talking about are you coming at things with a materialist viewpoint and trying to actually get the facts on the ground, like no, like there's not all fucking subjects are settled. And I think
we should be able to hold multiple truths.
yes,
And we should be able to understand that there's contradiction in the dialectic.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I worked with people in that life, and it's rough. It's a rough fucking life.
and actually I'm gonna do a little quick like little theory nerd fucking throwback shit. But like if you got some fucking time, On Contradiction by Mao is a pretty good way to just even understand and like go about thinking of yes, we've got desks, we've got trees, but then there's this thing called wood. Right, and we got to understand wood to understand these things, right? And like things can be difficult, and like yes, but that's where I don't know. I'm just happy that the discussion was had.
No,
and I think there just needs a little bit more of it.
I love the show, and we do have great conversations off air because sometimes we feel I'll be completely honest before we hang up. Sometimes we have conversations off air because we're afraid to have them on air because we're not pounding the table and saying this is the right way to think. We're just throwing ideas out and going, but what about this? What about that? And it's so uncomfortable in the moment we're in because we are hyper politicized to the point where I really hate, I'm going to say it, that if there is an Overton window shifting on the left, it is to the right. Cats are real. Get this guy off this. Don't let him say that. Like,
you said it now.
Wow.
You said it
Okay.
now.
All right. Interesting. Okay. Interesting. I've seen that before. In doing all that research for the video essay, watching a shit ton of right-wing media from the early 2000s and even some from the 80s, there's a reason why all those cats from the 60s bought in to that rhetoric. It's fiery, what they're used to. They also grew up in a time where news and right-wing figures were very buttoned down and straight-laced and adult. So when you have these newer figures like Rush Limbaugh and they're yelling about your new problems, you're a little more apt to listen than to the buttoned down, straight-laced, monotone nature of NPR. So whenever you hear the story about my dad was a lefty and now he loves Fox News, they speak to a certain sensibility.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that the weird, like, not to keep us here longer, but isn't that the weird transformation of like the American left, where during the 70s, late 60s, going into the 70s, post-Vietnam, our left consisted largely of like unionized, like labor movements.
Yes.
And whether we wanted to admit it or not, the fucking hippies, right? But look at what's happened now. Those people have turned into the Rush Limbaugh, the Glenn Beck loving, Fox News and OAN watching folks. And it's really fucking weird because like my mother, and like, I've told you guys, my mother is not a good person. We don't have a great relationship, but I told her, I'm working to organize some stores here in town. My grandfather spent 36 years in a steel mill, unionized his whole life. Took care of, a family of 7 on a unionized paycheck. Was the president of his union of, United Steelworkers. And my mother literally was like, "What's up with that commie bullshit? Like, why would you do that?" And I was like, "Have you not like spoken to me in the last like 15 years?" Like, she's like, "When you said you were a communist, I thought you were just joking." And I'm like, "No."
Nah,
So like my
joke's on
mother,
you.
yeah, my mother literally grew up in a union household, and has become like this proponent of right to work laws. And I'm like, where the fuck, what happened to you?
But that's something that like I think that we'd hit on this past Saturday, and like this is where I mean I would like to see more just I don't know work, more writing, more discussion on it of the like why the left is here, right? You talk about the 50-year counter revolution, and I mean this is something that like I was talking with Karthik earlier, and it's uh Gerald Horn was like framing it as basically like the United States government is just like a cycle of counter revolutions. Um but
I can see that. Like, I can
yeah.
buy into that.
But like
Howman, though.
yeah, like taking the past 50 years, we look at where the left is now, the real like just thought process of not only of just like that understanding, and this is not like of like is this even just saying hey to the leftists out there, this is why we are the way we are, right? That understanding of like these were the things, some of it's just bad decision making by left organizations, right? We can understand that, but then also like the state oppressing, murdering, harassing, all of these things to the point to where we're here, right? To where you've got this fucking Bernie Sanders dude who comes up, he awakens a lot of young people, starts even like galvanizing, a lot of the olds that have been around, because like that's where Pascal and Adolph Reed, that's like it's good that Michael Brooks was like one of the people who are aware, but it's like these are the people who have been on the left the entire time, and I like yeah, like we need to start now coalescing again. The things that we're talking about and being frustrated with of not having a political organization that can even fucking knock out a flea. That's only changed by one thing, and that's organizing. That's coming together, that's choosing to spend a little bit of your time every week to do something that you weren't doing, right?
Oh God, Marcus!
It
Every
sucks,
week,
but
every
that's
It's
week.
so hard. It's hard
but
because we have something, and I'll leave with this. I'll let you guys think because we're going a little long, and
yeah.
I
And I gotta
really,
either I gotta take a bathroom break or we gotta
I'm gonna get tomorrow we got an interesting show about debate. I'm sure I'm getting myself ready for all the shit that comes with that.
Oh yeah, you have Has come on. That'll be good.
No, Burgess and Kasparian.
You need to let me on with Burgess again.
And spit all over my computer screen.
You need to let me on with Burgess again. I like that.
Before you go, let me hit
I
you
like
with this question that you're not ready for. As you're getting ready to do another show. There is something that we haven't had before, which is a release valve. And that release valve sometimes is the void of social media. And I don't know exactly how I feel about it, but there is something to be said about that release valve that does keep, I think, people from doing more, because you can yell into the void a lot easier and get your frustrations out and then be validated by those frustrations. That's something that's very different. You yelling at a street corner 30 years ago is one thing, but yelling online and then having 100 people like it and then re-yell it is validity to your yelling. And
Nah, you know,
It's hard to
like this
get
is
people to stop
where,
yelling.
you know, I mean, you may be right, but it's like it still leaves us in the end with the same truth. Is that whether there are distractions or not, you know, we're still coming into a situation where capitalism is still doing all the things that it's doing, and it's still creating the ills. It's still creating, uh, I mean, just the strict poverty. And like that's the thing too. Is like, well, I think one of the things that's like even with this Ukraine like invasion, you know, food agriculture is going to be
Yeah.
disrupted, you know. And then so that's the thing, is like really at the end of the day, like, yeah, I think you know, like you're right, like when like it was, you know, whether it was like a fucking radio station, whether it's a television, you know, whether it was now social media that just allows for Che Guevara to go from revolutionary to t-shirts sold at Target. I
Well,
mean,
think of it this way. Think of it this way. Think of it this way. This is kind of my point. This is what I've been working on in this piece that I've been writing and erasing and erasing and writing. You have the ability now. You know, Anton said this on the show. We said this on the show with Esperanza. Pascal brought up something very interesting when Esperanza was talking about what about the Philippines and they're, you know, this, that, and the other, kind of a third world view of revolution. There's a lot of people that love to look at the third world as like, well, this is the model. And Djene and Pascal brought up something very interesting. Like, these are agrarian societies where people are kind of cut off by the tools of capitalism, unlike young American children. So if you grew up in a village, one of the fucked off islands in the archipelago of the Philippines, you
you
could
remember
probably
you
do
remember
right.
what I asked you? Remember the question I asked you off of that discussion?
Yes.
It's a very frustrating thing to have a realization to. But I asked Jason, it was like, was it Sunday? The day
It
after?
was Sunday, yeah.
I called Jason. I'm like, man, I've been thinking about this shit. And I asked him, I was like, and all I was say is like, there hasn't been a revolution in a, you know, mature capitalist society, right? Or like, in especially like some type of late stage capitalist society. And then we talk about the United States, which is like the disgusting zombie heart of capitalism. We actually don't have a model for that.
Yeah.
We use the tools to just voice our frustrations, and it's really hard to decouple also from a mindset of American exceptionalism. I think when we say exceptionalism, we just think of it as America is great. It's not just America is great. We are a land that has a lot of mythology, and we love heroes. And all American is like Pascal and I talked about it today on the David Feldman show. We were guests on there. And Pascal called me early this morning. He always forgets that I live in California, or he just doesn't give a shit. Either way, it's fucked up. But anyway, we were having a discussion about the kind of necessity for messianic figures when it comes to leadership. And part of the video essay I did, and a big thing that I'm writing about, is Trump and Sanders served the same purpose, as did Bush Jr., as did Bill Clinton, and definitely as did Barack Obama. These are messianic figures for a lot of people that are going to lead them to the promised land. And what happens when we fall for these messianic figures, we love upholding systems. So just like the wonderful judge that doesn't give strict sentences or no fines, you know, you're upholding a judicial system that you said was problematic 5 minutes ago. So is it the system or is it the man?
Yeah.
And that becomes, in my opinion, that's the problem that we're dealing with right now. And this is still because a lot of us are still trying to decouple from this reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really have to think about it too much and write about it or make any art about it, because while I'm doing that, I can't get the attaboys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those attaboys, those likes, that shit is maybe the most heinous creation of all time, because it really is, in my opinion, a release valve for any sort of real building. And COVID hasn't helped, because it's very, very hard to get people just to not, like, I watch when I'm not doing this shit, I watch a chiropractor like just crack people. There's nothing sexual about it. It's just a chiropractor, right? And most of the problems that people have when they go see her, they're like, "Oh, my neck is sore because I'm looking at my phone all the time."
Yeah. Well,
See, the great thing is I don't need attaboys because I spent 16 years as an infantryman and my self-esteem's so wrecked that I really don't need more than one person to be like, that was smart. So
the
like when I
lack-
get that
yeah.
when I get that one like, I'm like, I'm good, man. I am fucking great
Yeah.
right now, you know?
The lack of yelling and name calling is actually all I need. That and I'm good. However, now I do want to say, hey, we're gonna fucking close it out. I'm taking the reins on this fucking thing. Thank y'all for watching another episode of Beyond the Red Zone. We will be back not next Monday, but the Monday after that, talking about whatever sports is going on. Now, do I say I did like Jason hit the button and we are out?
Love it.